Hello everyone, today we're diving into some chilling stories based on real experiences from divers. If you enjoy it, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really means a lot to me. Now let's sit back and listen to these stories together. Story number 1. Confessions of a deep-sea diver. I just quit my job at a deep-sea diving company. I worked for a large company that specialized in diving for salvage, underwater demolition, ship repair, and search and recovery. They were a reputable company that was considered safe and reliable, so much so that they were frequently hired by the government to work on jobs. Honestly, I'm gonna miss this job. The people I worked with were truly the best at what they did, but there's only so much you can witness down in the deep before you decide to never go in the ocean again. These are just some of the secrets that many divers take to the grave. On the way to a hired job, our propeller got tangled. I suited up and prepared for a quick dive to clear it. I did a quick check and found a thick rope wrapped around the propeller and shaft. I reported to the supervisor, and he lowered a canvas bag with the tools I needed to cut it free. I hung the bag on the shaft and began clearing the propeller. It didn't take long, and I returned to my tool bag. I noticed a strange rattling when I dropped the tools into the bag. When I looked in the bag, it was filled with large seashells, many of them broken that I had crushed. After getting out of the water and out of my dive gear, I began to examine them. The shells had what looked like hieroglyphs carved into them. I was told by one of the older guys that this was not uncommon and had happened to a few of them before. Another time, we were on a military aircraft recovery. When we got there, the Navy ships were already present, waiting for us to recover it for them. We were briefly told that they had lost contact with the pilot and wanted us to recover it for investigation. I was on communication duty, logging notes, talking to the divers, and keeping track of depth and bottom time. When the divers reached the site, they reported the aircraft was intact. We were all surprised. The supervisor asked how severely damaged it was, and they explained it was perfectly intact, meaning there was no visible damage at all. It was just sitting on the bottom. Even stranger, the canopy of the aircraft was still closed, meaning the cockpit was still sealed. In other words, the pilot did not escape, but there were no signs of the pilot. We recovered the aircraft, and the military took over. We never heard about it again. I witnessed another strange phenomenon from the surface at the site of a planned demolition. It needs to be explained that one way to track divers is to observe their bubble streams. When the diver inhales, their demand regulator provides air from the umbilical. Then when they exhale, the air is released into the water and floats to the surface. On the surface, you can observe the bubble stream to get a general idea of the diver's location. This time, we were hundreds of miles offshore and had sent 2 divers down. About an hour into the dive, we began to notice something strange was happening. There were 3 distinct bubble streams coming from where they were working. At first, we assumed there was a current and it was affecting them, but soon we noticed a 4th bubble stream off in the distance. It stopped about 20 feet from the divers, near those mysterious bubbles. We asked the divers, but neither could see anything out of the ordinary. Then, even from the surface, we heard a terrifying scream from underwater, and then silence. The divers weren't too worried. We hear strange things all the time. Sound travels well in water, and you learn to assume it's far away. But soon, it seemed as though the water in the distance was boiling, and it was moving closer. But it wasn't boiling. It was countless new bubble streams moving closer to where the divers were working. The supervisor ordered the divers to the dive sled for retrieval. The bubbles were now alarmingly close, and the divers were being pulled up, saying they began to see dark shapes in the distance. They couldn't make out what they were. We made the decision to pull the divers up without completing decompression and put them in the hyperbaric chamber. On another dive near the Bahamas, I had a frightening experience. It was my first salvage job with them, so I went down with a very experienced diver. At over 200 feet, we were inspecting the wreck for tie-off points. As I approached the bow, I noticed he was inspecting a damaged section of the hull. He swam a few feet inside the ship and looked around. I asked him a couple of times if he wanted me to secure the gas hose, the gas line from outside the ship. It would have been advisable, as it's dangerous to go inside a wreck. He said no, he didn't want to go inside. He insisted he was on the port side. Assuming he was disoriented, I reached in to pull him out. Just before I touched him, I noticed there were no bubbles from his helmet. Whatever this was, it wasn't breathing. I backed away and reported there was something else down here. I expected to be ridiculed, but I wasn't. The next thing I heard was the dive supervisor. Both divers prepared to depart the bottom. When we reached the surface, I asked the supervisor about it. He said he refused to put the divers in a hazardous situation. He then refused to elaborate. We refused to complete the salvage. I'm not entirely sure how to explain the next dive. I was on the bottom, lying prone, looking up at the surface. All I could see were different shades of darkness. Suddenly, I woke up. I didn't remember how I got here. I realized I couldn't remember going into the water or even why I was here. I tried to command my body to stand up, but realized I couldn't move. I couldn't control my body. Via comms, I could hear on the surface someone directing the other diver to find me. How long had I been down here? How long had I been missing? He told the surface, they got him. I tried to scream, but couldn't even do that. After a few minutes of frantic communication between the diver and the surface, I noticed a shadow becoming clearer. It was moving towards me. "Surface, I found him," he said. He reached down and grabbed my harness to pull me towards the dive sled. As he pulled me, I rolled over and caught a glimpse of my surroundings. I was lying in a pile of human bones. One of the strangest things I've ever witnessed happened on a body recovery mission. Even I wouldn't believe it if I wasn't the one underwater. The military located a site where they believed a few missing World War II sailors were. I went down with another diver with body bags to retrieve the remains. On the bottom we found 3 skeletons. We placed them in the bags and returned to the dive sled. On the way back to the surface, we saw the bags begin to move. At first, it was slight, then a violent shaking and rolling. Bubbles escaped from 2 of the bags, then they went still. The third bag continued to struggle. We reached the surface and sat on the deck, immediately removing our gear. We were afraid to touch the bags, but one of the assistants finally unzipped the bag that was moving. A frail old man came rolling out, coughing water. We stood there in disbelief of what we were witnessing. Still unsure of what to do, I ran to the other 2 bags and unzipped them. There were 2 other old men lying still in the bags. They looked as if they had drowned. We attempted CPR, but were unable to save them. The man, who was somehow alive, was backing away from us, screaming about the horrors he witnessed. He screamed about an eternity in burning fire. We locked him in a room and contacted the military that we had found a survivor. Within 1 hour, a military helicopter was overhead to pick up the 2 bodies and the survivor. We placed the bodies back in the bags and handed them over. The man bent down to examine them, unzipping the bag. As he opened it, an unbearable stench filled the air. The bodies looked as if they were decomposing, as if they had been dead and submerged for a week. He zipped it back up and requested they be loaded onto the helicopter. Then we led him to the survivor. We could hear screaming from down the hallway. We opened the door to find blood splattered on the walls. He was alive and screaming, but he also looked as if he was beginning to decompose. The man calmly led him to the helicopter, and both were taken up. We never heard about them again. However, I went back to check the room. In his own blood, he had drawn hieroglyphs on the wall. I'm still not entirely sure what I saw, but a few things seemed to stand out. Waves, fire, and bodies. There were a lot of them on the wall. But as soon as I entered, the supervisor began to erase the wall. He refused to let us inspect it further. I've heard rumors of the Deep Keepers. I've been wondering about them for quite some time. I believe they are the connection between many of our stories. The legends of them were rarely spoken of among the crew. But this is what I've gathered over the years. Humans are not meant to wander the depths of the ocean. And when a diver dies in the deep, it doesn't stay that way. They are cursed to wander the ocean forever. And when the living are found, in their jealous rage, they will drag you back to the depths from whence they came. Part 2. Before I share any more, there are a few things I want to clarify. I have received an overwhelming amount of comments and private messages since I posted. A few pointed out to me that it's likely very few people have had experiences like these, and of those, even fewer could say they just quit their job. Therefore, there are probably many people out there who know who I am or could easily find out. That being said, I still believe everyone deserves to know. First, I will answer a few common questions I've received. Yes, I have experienced many horrors in the ocean, but considering the number of dives I've completed, these experiences are truly rare. Basic information about our dives, while it varies by job, we have a common standard. We are hard hat divers, meaning hard hat helmets, not scuba. Air is supplied from the surface. We have a surface air system that runs through an umbilical down to the diver. The umbilical attaches to the helmet to supply air. Intertwined with the umbilical are essential items. Without getting too technical, there is a power hose for lights, communication, and basically a depth gauge. In addition, we carry a tank on our back as an emergency air source. It doesn't hold much, just enough to get to the surface in an emergency. We do not use rebreathers for this type of work. However, we sometimes use full face masks instead of helmets or scuba, if it is more practical. But rarely so the deep keepers. I have never found any information on them online. The only people I've heard discuss them are crew members. I was told other crews have encountered them as well, but even the guys on my crew were hesitant to talk about them. I will answer more questions as they arise. But I will return to the reason you are truly here. While working on an oil rig, we used ROVs. Imagine a small remote-controlled submarine. For inspection, we were hired to check for damage or structural defects after the rig complained of unusual vibrations. In operation, the ROV is tethered by a cable that supplies power, structural components, and transmits video and sonar images to the surface. As the ROV descended into the darkness below, we began to notice thin scratches along the structure. At first, it was just enough to scrape off the marine growth from the metal, but the deeper we went, the deeper the scratches turned into grooves. As we descended even deeper, we began to notice the scratches looked intentional. We brought the ROV closer for inspection. There before our eyes were hieroglyphs carved into the metal, and they were fresh. The deeper we went, the older the carvings were. They were corroded and partially covered in marine growth. Whatever was making these carvings was slowly advancing from the bottom. Then the ROV stopped responding. It began to shake back and forth. We lost power. We tried to pull it up by the tether, but it seemed to be snagged. Then we felt it tug the line, but something from the ROV's direction was pulling it deeper. Two more guys jumped in to pull on the line and wrestled to pull it up. The line began to creak and then snapped. We pulled up the remainder of the line, but that ROV was gone forever. The supervisor then had the task of figuring out how to report the findings to the oil company. One incident occurred about a year ago. On a salvage job, we were installing tie-off equipment. As I faced the ship, my back was to the open sea. I didn't notice anything approaching. Suddenly, something slammed into the tank on my back. I was pinned to the ship, crushed by the force. I turned around to see nothing. I would later learn I had several bruised ribs from the impact. After reporting to the other diver on the surface, we were told they would pull us up. We got on the dive sled and began to be pulled to the surface. We kept our eyes wide open, scanning the shadows not far away. At a decompression stop, we began to see a large, dark shape circling. We continued to watch as it circled closer. We began to see it more clearly. It was a giant shark circling us. Now, I have never been afraid of sharks, but there is something about being circled by a giant shark in the middle of the ocean, suspended on a chain that can strike fear into the bravest of men. Keep in mind, we were not in a cage, just a standing sled. It felt like being served on a platter. Eventually, it circled close enough to see its features, but I didn't recognize the species. It was larger than a great white and a completely different color. It was mostly black with some gray accents. It continued to eye us as we sat there, helpless, praying to be left alone. By the time we completed our decompression requirement, it was close enough to touch. The dive sled pulled us up and out of the water, relieved the shark had not decided to find out what we tasted like. On the surface, we concluded the shark had slammed into my back, but only hit the emergency air tank. We performed another dive, this time in clear water, and it's something great to work where you can actually see your surroundings. With over 100 feet of visibility, we descended to the bottom and began to work. There were 2 missiles launched from a military aircraft that had failed to detonate. We were informed of their location and told they were unarmed and would not detonate if handled properly. We located them easier than expected and began to prepare for tie-offs. As soon as I placed my hand on the first missile, my teammate said, "Oh God, my stomach just dropped. I don't care how many times you've worked with explosives. I honestly believe you will always have a knot in your stomach and a nagging worry in the back of your head." I looked up and realized he wasn't talking about the missiles. He saw a wall of sand rising in the distance, something that hopefully was just a current stirring up sand from the ocean floor. The sand wall was growing, about 30 feet tall. Worse yet, it was moving towards us. Soon, it arrived. It's hard to describe poor visibility in the water. It's not a matter of not enough light, but there is too much in the water for light. Imagine fog, but imagine this fog is thicker than anything you have ever seen. I'm talking about fog so thick you could shine a flashlight in someone's eyes from 1 inch away and you couldn't see them. That is poor visibility in the water. The moment the sand hit, we were plunged into pure darkness. I put my hand on my mask, but I couldn't even see it. After a few minutes, we began to hear metal grinding. As fast as it arrived, the sand disappeared. We were back in clear water, except there was no sign of the missiles. I was within arm's reach when the sand wall hit, but now, even feeling under the sand, there was no trace of them. The next incident occurred on a humanitarian job, which we volunteered for. After a section of a bridge collapsed into the ocean, 50 feet deep, we volunteered to recover the vehicles and hopefully bodies. By the time we arrived, the collapse had happened over a week prior. We spent the first day surveying the area and developing a plan to pull out as much as possible within a week's time frame. On the morning of the second day, we were actively pulling cars from the bottom. It was difficult work, but not due to the effort required. The disarray within the vehicles was heartbreaking. These were not military pilots or sailors lost at sea. These were families on vacation or people on their way to work. It's hard to say which was worse. The cars where we found entire families with seatbelts on and parents in the back seat trying to unbuckle their children. Or the cars where parents had escaped, leaving their children still buckled in the back seat. I tried not to imagine the panic that was occurring inside the vehicles as they filled with water from cracked windshields or windows as people frantically tried to escape. But I couldn't forgive those who let their families drown. Each day we moved to a new area of vehicles, and on the fourth day, we began to notice a few cars with open doors and no one inside. We were happy to have found easier work, especially with the assumption that the tragedy had lessened with people escaping the wreckage, until I began to tie off a minivan for recovery. The family inside was not so lucky. As I ran the strap through the minivan and prepared to pull, I noticed the other diver inspecting the tie-off equipment. He began to undo one of my hooks. I asked him what he was doing, and the response was not what I had hoped for. "I'm checking this van for bodies." I felt that familiar gut-wrenching feeling. Slowly, I crawled to the diver and turned him towards me. It resisted but slowly turned its face towards me. The mask was open and I fought the instinct. I leaned in, and I wish to this day that I hadn't. It was pitch black, but I could see the features too clearly. The flesh was rotting. This diver had been dead for a long time. I began to scream in disbelief. Comms were blaring, divers and surface frantically trying to get my attention. But I was focused on one thing. I was crawling away from it, but I got tangled in the umbilical around the tie-off equipment, in a state of panic. The thing turned its attention back to the minivan. As I frantically untangled myself, I noticed the lack of bubbles from the helmet. It was opening the minivan door and reaching inside. As I swam away from the vehicle, I watched it grab one of the passengers and pull them into the darkness. This was when I began to realize that perhaps I was not cut out for working underwater. I continued to dive for a while longer. I knew I should. All that time, the thought lingered in the back of my head. I needed to find a safer profession. Part 3. I apologize for taking so long to update you all. I've been putting off this story for the past week. Afraid to share. I believe this will be the last update for today. After my last post, I was contacted by a former dive supervisor. He told me about the dangers of sharing these stories. Then his tone changed. Things are getting worse down there. He had never been comfortable talking about it with me before. But he continued. "We had an incident last week, and we lost people." I was shocked. We all knew the dangers. We had all seen the deep keepers, but no one truly expected to die. After one or two close calls, you just hope for more close calls, he continued, in honor of those who have fallen. You need to use your best judgment before sharing and realize it is not safe to share this story. Then, he continued, the contacted crew was on a standard salvage job for the military. They were very vague about the job but said a ship had sunk. The dive crew and equipment were loaded onto a U.S. Navy vessel for escort to the project. This was unusual but not uncommon. But things became stranger as they approached the project. First, they were briefed by the commanding officer. He reviewed the non-disclosure agreement for the job. The briefing was then handed over to a man who did not introduce himself. He explained, "The Navy is working on a prototype submarine. The capabilities and new technology will not pertain to us. All you need to know is that it is massive. The size will dwarf any submarine we have ever seen." He then admitted the Navy did not need a standard salvage crew but rather assistance in recovering the prototype. He informed the crew that 4 days prior, they had lost contact with the submarine. Sonar images showed the submarine was on the bottom and appeared intact, but no one was responding to communication attempts. When the ship arrived at the site, they found they were not alone. Nearly a dozen Navy ships were already waiting. The divers were allowed to enter the water and begin work. The first task was to inspect the submarine for damage and hazards. They needed to provide a bottom report for the engineers developing a plan to retrieve it. They did not want us to tie off randomly. They needed the prototype in the best possible condition. The divers entered the water and were soon awestruck by the creation. It looked like nothing they had ever seen. It was enormous. From where they descended, they couldn't see the head or tail of the submarine, and the water was unusually clear. Additionally, the submarine was made of what looked like a reflective metal. They began to inspect the submarine for damage. After reaching maximum bottom time, they were brought to the surface for a changeover. There were no incidents. They reported to the next dive team that they had explored from the midsection to the stern and found no obvious damage. The submarine seemed to have settled gently into the sand. The next divers went down to inspect from the midsection to the bow. They began to proceed while checking for damage. About 10 minutes into the dive, one diver began to tap on the hull. Immediately, both divers reported they could hear someone inside the submarine tapping on the hull and screaming. They couldn't understand what they were screaming, but the message was clear: they were terrified. The supervisor reported they found evidence the crew was still alive. The divers continued to proceed for about 5 more minutes before the next report. There were carvings on the surface of the submarine's metallic scales. Hieroglyphs had been carved into the submarine, and they appeared to extend from the bow of the submarine towards the midsection. Still, there was no sign of structural damage that would cause the submarine to cease operation. The divers returned to the surface, and the commanding officer was fully briefed on the day's findings. The crew was assured the submarine was capable of sustaining its crew. They were eager to recover it, but the crew was in relatively little danger. As day 2 began, divers went down with instructions to locate 4 designated spots. The engineers needed to verify they were still structurally sound for attaching tie-off lines. Immediately, the divers reported they could still hear tapping from inside. They began to locate the tie-off points quickly and easily. As they approached the bow, within the area covered by the carvings, they noticed a silhouette moving around. Both of them saw it was undeniable, but soon it disappeared from view. The divers couldn't find where it went. They agreed to quickly find the remaining 2 spots. The work was fast, and the remaining 2 spots were located. All 4 were intact and ready for use. As they prepared to return to the surface, they were informed that 2 more locations were requested for inspection. Perhaps 2 hatches, left and right, that the engineers insisted needed checking. The supervisor was hesitant. "The engineers here are agitated by your reports of something moving around the sub. They insisted you find 2 hatches. I'm not sure what's going on. They're being very vague. Please be careful." The divers returned to the area and began to scrutinize it. As they worked, they soon saw a silhouette emerge from the submarine. It was dragging a body out of a hatch. They froze and watched as it closed the hatch and began to drag it into the hull. Then they approached it and realized the hatch was almost indistinguishable between the scales and carvings on the submarine. But it was there. As they reported this, that hatch began to open again. The surface lost contact with the two divers. It was pure panic on the surface. The assistants reported tension on the divers, umbilicals. A backup diver suited up and prepared to enter the water. The umbilicals began to shake and pull violently. The backup diver was clearly terrified, but proceeded to the side of the ship, ready to enter the water. The tension on the umbilicals released, and suddenly the lines became slack in the water. A few minutes later, bubbles erupted at the surface. The supervisor grabbed the backup diver and told him, "Get the divers and get out of here." He entered the water and began to follow the umbilicals. His goal was to follow the umbilicals to the distressed divers. As he followed the umbilicals, he saw air spewing out violently from below, and he continued deeper. He reached the source. The umbilicals had been cut from the divers, and air was being pumped into the water. Knowing the divers had no air source, he frantically searched for the two divers. After 5 minutes, he found no sign and was ordered to check the hatch. He frantically proceeded to the hatch, hoping beyond hope to find the divers alive. As he approached, he saw the hatch was open and saw two bodies lying on the floor. He entered the space to retrieve them. As he did so, he noticed several silhouettes in the darkness of the room. He grabbed the nearest body and began to drag it as the silhouettes lunged towards him. They immediately swarmed him, tearing him and his equipment apart. In a panic, he dropped the body and tried to escape the space. In the struggle, he freed himself and bolted for the surface. He was pulled aboard and over the ship, unconscious. His bloodied body lay on the deck, likely suffering from an arterial gas embolism from ascending too quickly. The crew rushed him into the hyperbaric chamber for treatment. The supervisor informed the commanding officer that all diving operations were being terminated. He had lost 2 men, and one was in critical condition. There were unexplainable things happening on this submarine, and he would not sacrifice any more men. Treatment continued through the night, and the diver awoke. He told the supervisor he was done. He would never go underwater again. He was assured no one would go back, and as soon as treatment was complete, the entire crew would return to shore. The next morning, the crew was summoned for what they believed to be a debriefing. They entered the room to speak with the commanding officer and the engineering team. "Please sit down," he said, then announced they would not be proceeding with the prototype recovery. However, whatever was down there could not be left. Whatever was inside the submarine had to be completely destroyed. The crew would enter the water again and place explosives at designated locations by the engineering team. The supervisor angrily asked to be taken ashore and released from the ship. Armed guards entered the room and restrained him. The CO reiterated the order and made it clear the crew would not be allowed to leave until the job was complete. The dive area was reassembled under the supervision of armed sailors. The supervisor continued to protest the job. After over an hour of conflict, 2 divers agreed under duress to enter the water to place the explosives. 2 divers entered the water. Fearful, they moved to the designated locations and began to place the explosives. They began to hear tapping and screaming from inside the submarine. The divers understood these people would be killed and began to sob. On comms, he reiterated they would not be allowed to leave until the job was complete. After regaining their composure, the 2 remorseful divers continued. The 2 completed the mission and returned to the surface. In shame, they refused to speak to anyone and left the dive area. The ships began to depart the site and the crew was reconvened. The commanding officer thanked them for their service to the great country and informed them they would be handsomely rewarded for the unfortunate tragedy they had encountered. He then reviewed the security of the job and everything they had witnessed. His final words to them were that the prior events had already leaked to the public. Please realize there will be severe consequences for any information leaked about what happened here today. My supervisor ended the conversation by saying the entire crew had agreed they would be leaving the diving company. The fear of the deep sea and regret for the job was too great. He told me, there are places where humans are simply not meant to explore. Story number 2. I'm a pipeline diver. The terror of the pipes. A recent disaster made me realize there's a terror lurking deep within those pipelines. If you're reading this, it means I made it out. My story is brutal, and I'm going to tell it in the style it was born for, so you can understand it, so you can see it through the eyes of one who lived it. Consider this a warning. I'll admit, I'm not sure you'll ever find yourself in such a situation. But hey, who knows, right? My name is Kedar. I take pride in my work, and I work on pipelines. My current job involves an oil pipeline in Block 34. It's way down at the bottom of the sea, between Saudi Arabia and Iran. It's just past midday, but sadly, we're too far from the surface for light to reach, so my surroundings are illuminated only by the dim golden shafts of my flashlight. A few bubbles escape from my mask. They ripple and vanish from sight as I gently kick my feet, slowly propelling myself through the darkness. As a worker down here, I'm one of three, but the other two are nowhere to be seen at the moment. The beam of my light plays over the large metal pipe, which stretches up into a survival pod, a sort of liquid, artificial air pocket, and down into the abyss below. I peer down and shine my light along the pipe's body. It only reflects off rusted metal, a solitary, cylindrical monolith in the watery world around me. I lower the beam as far as it will go, but all I see are my own webbed feet below, gently kicking, and the large pipe disappearing into the dark blue blackness beneath me. A chill runs through my body. I hear my heartbeat in my ears. Where this vertical pipe meets its horizontal brethren at the ocean floor, there's a massive metal structure. Its purpose is to hold a variety of equipment temporarily attached to the pipe. I can't see the beast right now, but the mere knowledge of it. Knowing that deep below lurks a grotesque metal skeleton, patiently waiting beneath my feet. I shiver. They tell stories about this place, you know. About these waters, tales of wicked spirits that play tricks on divers. Sea monsters, they call them. These spirits show divers illusions and distortions to confuse them, deliberately leading them astray as a form of entertainment. So the story goes, and then depending on the spirit's mood, they either get bored and let them go, or they swallow them whole. Something glints in the darkness at the corner of my eye, and I turn in the water, raising my beam. A gasp escapes into my mask, but the beam only falls upon a school of small, silver fish. They flit past, paying me no mind, and I regain my breath. Stupid Kedar, I mumble to myself, my voice muffled by the mask, and I kick my way through the water along the pipe towards the air pocket of the survival pod. I see the rippling surface of the water above. It's getting closer, and I catch glimpses of color on the other side, my colleagues. Finally, I break the surface, spit out my regulator, and lift my mask, shaking my hair as I climb onto the small deck surrounding us. A seat-like platform circles the inner edge of the survival pod. As I said, I'm one of three. My colleagues are named Amir and Ahmed, and they're sitting waiting for me, their legs dangling over the edge, their webbed feet dipping into the water below. I groan and sigh as I sit down beside them, my webbed feet half submerged. This small space seems paradoxical. A feat of physics, we sit deep beneath the sea in the confined space the survival pod provides. And we have air. The survival pod is a metal box about 4 meters wide, 3 meters high. The air here is damp and stale, but at least it's fairly breathable. From the middle of the water between us, the pipe stretches up and into this stagnant air. The pipe is currently plugged with a giant rubber bung. One will need to depressurize before the shift ends. Its purpose is to prevent oil within the pipe from leaking into the sea. Thanks to the survival pod, we can safely remove it without harming the environment. That pipe goes straight down to the ocean floor in a straight line, and at that point it splits in two, running horizontally across the seabed. One end goes north, a few miles off the coast of Saudi Arabia, the other goes south. It's just wide enough for a person to crawl through if urgent repairs are needed from within, but the diameter isn't huge. I wipe salt water from my face as Amir connects a long black cable to a depressurizing machine. The cable's end dangling down the pipe and connected to the rubber bung. "See any spirits down there today, Kedar?" Amir asks as he tightens a seal on the cable. "Yan al-Bahar." Ahmed chuckles, stroking his beard. His voice, like Amir's, echoes in the slightly stuffy air of the survival pod. I laugh dryly. "No spirits." Amir nods. I think about the pipe disappearing down into the deep darkness below. I can't explain why it makes me shiver, but it does. "Just what?" Amir asks. "Nothing." I finish. And you guys, any spirits? I turned to Ahmad. Did you finally see John al-Bahar? I wave my hand and fingers mysteriously, teasing him. But Ahmad remains unfazed. You're joking, Kadar. But this sea, this ancient sea, if we're gonna see one, it'll be here. He claps his hands, and a small spray of water splashes down into the water at our feet. The blue abyss twinkles down into the sea below, the sea above, and the ocean all around. And I tell you this, he continues. Holding up a finger, I saw something. Oh, here we go. Amir mutters, rolling his eyes. No, listen, Ahmad says hastily. Just listen. So, I was there, right? About an hour ago, swimming around near the pipe when I was distracted by a fish. Amir shakes his head, and we exchange a look. You have to have seen it, Amir. A big yellow one. I wanted to get a closer look, so I left the pipe and followed it for just a moment. And eventually, it got scared and vanished into the blue. Ahmad pauses. He rubs his chin. It was actually a rather terrifying experience. I turned back to the pipe and of course I saw nothing but the endless void of the ocean. I tried to retrace my steps, but there was no sign. I was alone. It was scary. Amir and I are silent. But then, that's when I saw it. I saw them. Ahmad continues, almost bouncing on the metal platform we're sitting on. Slowly, I say, feeling myself sway with his bouncing. Amir flips a switch on the depressurizing machine. It begins to hum. Ahmad leans forward, looking between us. Out there, far off, I saw three shapes. Three silhouettes, like shadows in the deep and the darkness. You should write poetry. Amir mutters, flipping another switch. Against my better judgment, I'm too engrossed in Ahmad's story to pay precise attention to what he's doing. What kind of shadows? I ask. What kind of shapes? They were like smoke. No, more like fog, perhaps. Thick fog with flickering eyes that blinked like sunlight refracting. You have to look a certain way to see them. His voice lowers, becoming ethereal. I only saw them for a second or two, then they vanished, dissolved. How did you get back to the pipe? I ask. Did the spirits guide you? Amir chuckles. No, I just used my compass, Ahmad says. But that's not the point. I saw something, I know I did. I thought spirits were supposed to be dangerous, Amir says. The stories always tell of how wicked they are. They play tricks on divers like us. You know, they bang on the pipes. They groan from inside, making you think there's a monster in there waiting to break out and grab you. Perhaps that's why they appeared to me. Ahmad says thoughtfully, then points to the pipe between us. Perhaps they were trying to warn us. Perhaps there's a monster in the pipe. Amir scoffs. Don't be ridiculous. Perhaps when the bung is depressurized, Ahmad says softly. Perhaps the monster will leap straight out. And where will we go? We're practically stuck down here when you really think about it. There's a moment of uncomfortable silence, broken only by the slow hiss emitted by the depressurizing machine as it begins to depressurize the bung in the pipe. Amir says after a beat, shaking his head, "Don't say those ridiculous things, nonsense. All I wanted to say is, shrug. Spirits don't necessarily have to be scary. I know you guys don't really believe, but they can be helpful too. They don't swallow people whole. Bahar, mischievous perhaps, but not evil in their own right." Amir grumbles and waves his hand dismissively. Ahmad looks at me for support, and I just smile. Come on, I've said enough. I think we have work to do. Don't want to get in trouble again. The conversation shifts, and a collective groan echoes around the survival pod. I can't stand that guy, Amir says dramatically, and we all laugh. Our shared dislike for the man has become a regular joke between us. Zahir Velix is technically our colleague, and although we rarely work in close proximity, his projects seem to run parallel to ours, so we never escape him. He has thick red hair and a ridiculous stubble, and generally he makes himself an easy target. A busybody and a brown-noser. You get it? He does more hours than are necessary for free, I have to add. But despite his persistent and pathetic efforts, he's always overlooked for promotion because he has the charisma of a vacuum cleaner. Zahir has absolutely no appeal. Maybe we should play a prank on him before we go up, Amir suggests as the bung depressurizing machine speeds up, the hiss growing louder. What kind of prank? Ahmad asks. I don't know. We could go to his location at Azrak 1 and bang on the pipe. Mess with him a bit before the shift ends. Might be fun. Not worth it, I reply. Sounds fun, but Azra is 1.5 kilometers away. You really want to swim that far for a childish joke? And besides, we'll never fool him with the spirit thing. He doesn't believe in anything. He has no imagination. True, Amir nods regretfully. He fiddles with a dial next to it and taps it, and it completes its job. It depressurizes the bung enough, freeing up the space around it and opening the way down the pipe. This is supposed to allow us to reach in, pull out the depressurized bung, inspect it, check for leaks, damage, and whether the bung might need potential replacement. We should have been able to do this easily and safely because the pipe at this point and on this day is supposed to be filled with oil. However, for some reason, the pipe is not. There was, as it turns out, far less oil inside than we were told and led to believe. And so, what happens instead unfolds in a few terrifying seconds. A true nightmare that I will never, ever be able to forget. The positive pressure inside the survival pod, the small atmosphere keeping us alive, immediately rushes into the pipe, pushing a small amount of oil down with it at a horrific speed. This unnatural, rapid movement creates what I can only describe as a blinding vortex. Air and ocean are sucked up and around like a sudden whirlwind of chaos and horror in the blink of an eye. My vision is lost in a brutal, instantaneous rush of darkness as my body is slammed against the wall of the survival pod. I scream, but all I produce are foam and bubbles as my shoulder cracks against the edge of something metallic. The safety and sanctuary of the survival pod is shattered. I can see nothing but darkness as water floods my nose, mouth, and eyes, and I'm instantly and brutally sucked down the pipe. I can feel the walls of it pressing in on me from every side as I'm dragged catastrophically between them. I'm forced through water and oil headfirst at an almost neck-breaking speed. Blood rushing to my head as my arms and legs are battered and bruised against metal. There is only panic, terror, and darkness. My head smacks against metal as the horizontal pipe widens, and the world behind my tightly shut eyelids flashes red, then white. A ringing sound fills my ears, competing with the roar of water as I release an involuntary shriek of pain. Oil and seawater flood my mouth and lungs, and I swallow some and inhale the rest, choking and drowning as I'm pulled through the pipe along the seabed. I'm going to die. This single thought runs on repeat in my mind. I'm going to die, and this is the end. The horror of the situation is, for a fleeting moment, replaced by a strange calmness. The sound of rushing and crashing water doesn't diminish, but I feel my attitude change. It soothes me, and I think of a beach I visited as a child with my family as I prepare to exhale my last breath. Except, instead of creating bubbles as I do so, I instead begin to choke and gag. I begin to choke and gag and cough. And I realize immediately that this can only mean one thing. I've found air. I gasp and vomit. I try to bring my hands to my mouth, but they collide painfully against the inner wall of the pipe. My right wrist is throbbing angrily, sending pangs of pain up my arm. I think my entire hand might be broken. Air. I think to myself, and the image of the beach is lost. The horror instantly floods back into my mind, much like the water was sucked into the pipe. Much of my head is submerged, though my eyes, nose, and mouth are free. If I tilt my head up, my ears are raised above the waterline, and I can hear. But doing so presses my forehead against the cold metal above. I stop moving, and the reality of my situation suddenly dawns. I'm in the pipe. Oh no, I mumble loudly, vomiting more water and oil. Oh no, 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 I scream. I bang my good fist against the metal, shouting for help. Please, I yell into the pitch-black darkness. Please, someone. Amir. Ahmad. Panicked, I attack. There's nowhere to go, nowhere to turn, and no one to hear me. I can barely move. Water surges and laps around my face, and I gasp. My breathing becomes shallow and dangerous. You're not drowning, I have to keep telling myself. You're not drowning, you have some air, you can breathe, you can breathe. Calm down, calm down. Kadar. I try to lift my legs, and one of my webbed feet hits the ceiling of the pipe. I try to swivel slightly, and realize that doing so requires considerable effort and a reasonable amount of pain. I've seriously damaged my shoulder and neck. Perhaps the simple act of tilting my head causes a great pain that shoots down my spine. But to lower my head completely means the greater part of my face is submerged. I force myself to slow my breathing. It's a priority to breathe slowly, gently, in and out, slow, deep breaths. With a pained groan and a hammering heart, I wriggle and twist as best as I can, searching my diving gear. I believe I'm only wearing one webbed foot now. I think the other must have been ripped off when I was sucked into the pipe. No other gear is found. My mask, my air tank, all gone. It's gone. Oh my God, I whisper, and despite my logical mind, I bang against the pipe again. Hello? I yell into the pitch-black darkness. Hello? Is anyone there? Kadar. A voice comes from a little distance down the pipe. It echoes from the darkness beyond my feet. I try to lift my face a little higher, to peer into the void, but to no avail. I can't see anything. Hello, I yell back. Someone, Ahmad. Are you okay? Kadar. He shouts, a mix of relief and horror. You're alive. I can breathe. Are you okay? Another voice echoes from even further away. It's fainter, but I can still hear it, you guys. Amir's voice rings out. Are you both okay? Thank God, I murmur, holding back a small sob of relief. Amir, Kadar here. Are you injured? No, Amir calls. I think one of my arms is broken. Same. Am here. Slightly smaller. Damn it. I think my leg is too. Oh my God. He lets out what sounds like a cry of pain, then a curse. What do we do? Ahmad calls down the pipe. What do we do? He kicks the pipe, and the sound echoes down and over my head. Okay, wait, I yell, clenching my fists, thinking, using my overheated brain as best as possible. All three of us are alive. We're stuck in a pipe at the bottom of the sea. No one knows we're down here. And once they find the wreckage of the survival pod, they'll probably assume we were killed instantly, thrown into the sea. Maybe I feel the panic return. I try to stretch my limbs but can't. I kick the pipe in frustration and let out an angry yell. Calm down, Car. Am calls. It's okay, we'll be fine. Yes, I need to calm down. First things first, the pipe at the bottom of the sea splits. I don't know if we were pulled north towards the Azrak 1 location or south towards the Azrak 2 location. How far are they? I try to think. Azrak 1 is about 1.5 kilometers north of our old position at the survival pod. Azrak 2 is twice that distance south. I don't know how far along the pipe we were pulled. It all happened so fast we could have been hundreds of meters in either direction by now. All I know is that the air we're breathing. The pockets are created by undulations in the pipe, small bumps and rises. It's entirely possible there are more of these pockets, further down the tunnel. But how large is each air pocket, and to what point do they all run out? Okay, I yell down. Guys, I have an idea, and we don't have time to waste. Listen up, man. Ahmad calls up. There's a moment of silence. Amir. Ahmad calls down. Yes. He replies weakly. I'm here, but I'm not in great shape, I have to be honest. It's okay. I yell, forcing my confidence up. Believe and hope for us. For you guys, if not for ourselves, we'll be okay. Just listen. I snuffle, and the sound bounces off the pipe above me and back at my face. I tilt my head up to get my ears out of the water and wince in pain. We need to move, I say simply. We can't stay here, or we'll die. Any further pressure changes, and the pipe could flood entirely, and sooner or later, we'll run out of oxygen and suffocate. So I propose this. We do our best to move. We wriggle along the pipe as far as we can. If we're lucky, we were pulled north, and we don't know how far we've come. Azrak is at most 1.5 kilometers. That's as far as we can make it, I'm sure of it. And if we were pulled south, Amir calls. With this, I fall silent. The sound of something low and deep vibrates along the pipe, then trembles. Ahmad replies, Okay, Kadar, I'm with you, we'll do this. We'll crawl along the pipe, and we'll pray. Amir, I call down. What do you think? He coughs and groans. Kadar? He says, listen, I can barely move. I can't do it. You can. Amhead. Can you? Ahmet. Amir groans again. Ahmet, my injuries are severe. I can't move more than an inch. I'll have to stay behind. We can't leave you, Ahmet stammers, but Amir interrupts. Go, he says. And once you guys get out, you'll know where to find me. Can you go? You said it yourselves. The clock is ticking, so go. I hesitate, then let out a shaky sigh. God save you, brother. I call down, we'll be back. I promise we won't leave you. I know his voice, distant and faint. Damn it. I mutter angrily, banging my fist against the pipe. Ahmad. Are you ready? There's a pause. Yes, he says. I'm right behind you. Kadar, let's do it. And so, we begin our suffocatingly arduous adventure. Arduous is an understatement. The knowledge that outside these tight confines lies only the immense weight of the ocean. Kam is rakitis and kan precourage. Every inch we move requires an effort. I find little to no leverage on the wet, slippery, oil-soaked bottom of the pipe, so I have to find the narrowest grooves, primarily on the upper half, and wedge my toes or heels into them, using one good arm and one broken one to help propel myself through the treacherous rushing water. I can't see anything. There's no degree of light for my eyes to adjust to, so in the pitch blackness we remain. As we move, I try my best to keep track of the distance covered. My estimate is a reasonable one after 2 or 3 meters. After 10, my grip is weak, and then I simply lose track. It's impossible to tell. We just keep wriggling along the pipe, listening to the sound of our breathing, occasionally calling each other for reassurance. Amat and I move slowly and steadily through this underwater pipe, inch by painful inch. It's hard to say how much time has passed, but after about 20 minutes, I make a concerning discovery. At first, it's gradual enough that I don't notice. But now there's considerable pressure on the back of my neck. I have to keep my head as high as possible. And bored, I've been pressed against the metal for a while now. It's only when I have to contort my lips to take a breath that I realize. We're running out of air. I suppress a wave of panic and stop moving immediately. I wriggle backwards the way I came to give myself a little more airspace to work with. Water rushes into my ears, muffling my hearing. But I call down to Ahmad. Ahmad! I call. Can you hear me? He shouts back, hoarsely. Is everything okay? Ahmad. I hesitate. Ahmad. We're running out of air. There's a pause. What do you mean? He asks, his voice higher. More anxious. I mean, the air pocket is running out. Another pause. Perhaps there's another pocket further down. He says, I saw the diagrams of the pipe. The undulations aren't regular, so there might be another pocket. But what if there isn't? I shout back, my chest now rising and falling desperately. Damn it, no space, no light. I can't breathe. Get a hold of yourself, Ahmad shouts, and it cuts through the frenzy. I cling to his words and let them anchor me. We can do this, man. I take a deep breath. Okay. I say, okay. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna move as fast as possible along the pipe. I'm gonna hold my breath, and I'm gonna look for an air pocket. Whether I find one or not, I'll come back and let you know. Okay? You're the brave one. Ahmad's voice calls down. Don't overdo it. Good luck. Okay, I say, my heart thumping. I begin to take a series of slow, deep, gentle breaths, gradually expanding my lungs, preparing myself to hold it as long as possible. The sound is cold and alien in the darkness. My breathing is steady and deep, my chest rising and falling. I wriggle backwards along the pipe, my face pressed against it. The metallic air and oil and bleakness. I can't hear anything now. Water is up to the sides of my lips, trembling. I press my hands against the sides, doing my best to ignore the shooting pain through my right wrist. Here we go. Kadar. I take my last breath. My lungs fill to maximum capacity, and I prepare myself against the pipe. using my arms and legs to propel myself further. The air is gone, and I'm completely submerged in water. It creates a steady, rhythmic roar in my ears. I use anything I can to increase the distance I can travel. My elbows, my knees, my heels, my shoulders. I use them all to find leverage, inch by inch, faster than before. I push myself through the pipe, my heart pounding, the beat so loud, so very, very loud, my chest heaving, but I keep moving as far as I can, inch by inch. Don't panic, don't panic. If I don't find air, there's really nothing for us. We'll suffocate, or drown, or worse, be trapped in the belly of the pipe, and we might never be found. I have to keep moving, inch by inch. My hand brushes against a particularly oily section of the pipe, and instead of pressing against the sides, they simply slip out. In a flash, my momentum is lost, and I flail and gasp in horror as I realize my means of propulsion has now failed. No, I think with horrific flashes of panic. No. Bubbles, unseen, escape my lips as I writhe in the darkness, choking in the cold embrace of the slimy beast. Please, I beg, sending up prayers to a God I've neglected. Desperately searching for a surface to work on, my feet find a delicate groove, and I'm able to push myself another inch, and from there I can move another inch. My journey continues, but I'm afforded no respite, for soon I'll need to breathe. My lungs are starting to burn, and if I don't find another air pocket, I'll have to turn back through the pipe, back the way I came, through the slick, oily walls. What if I get stuck on the way back? What if I don't make it back? Why is this allowed to happen? I'm consumed by a sudden rage, and bubbles escape my clenched teeth as I push myself deeper and deeper through the water. As fast as possible, my lungs are starting to burn. I'm running out of air. Just a little more, I can find a little more. I'm running out of air, I'm going to die. Just a little more. I can do it, I can do it. And with a sudden gasp, and a large, trembling breath inward, I almost laugh in desperate gratitude as the angle of the pipe subtly changes, and I feel my face rise into a fresh air pocket. It's not fresh, of course, but in that moment, it's the sweetest air I've ever tasted. I stop and allow a few large, grateful breaths to fill and replenish my lungs. Thank God is all I can mutter, returning to my feet. Thank God. Thank God. I calm myself, and once I have my breath, I try to shout. I don't think he'll hear me, but I try anyway. I get no response, so I try tapping a rhythm on the pipe. Still no response, so regretfully, I prepare for the return journey. I'm scared, of course, but now I know it's possible, that there's air to be had safely on the other side. So I fill my lungs once more and wriggle back through the pipe. This time, feet first, towards Ahmad's position. I use the material of my diving suit to help me through the particularly oily section and bob back into the previous pocket. Coughing, oh my God. Kadar, you took your damn time. I thought you might have been okay. We can make it, I reply. There's another pocket up ahead, now listen. And I continue to explain the distance and what he'll need to do. Then, finally, for the third and hopefully final time, we push ourselves through the dark water, back under and the mouth of the pipe, with the promise of the next air pocket as our guiding light, inch by inch, as fast as possible, praying that Ahmad can keep up. And then, as before, my face bobs up to greet me into a new air pocket, but I keep moving to make room for his. Seconds pass, and just as I start to worry, I hear his cough, the sound of large breaths gulping air as he inhales. Yes, I yell, banging my good fist against the pipe. We did it, man. Yes, he coughs hoarsely. Yes, we did it. Then he lets out what sounds like a laugh, and it fills my heart with hope. Keep going, I yell at him. We keep going. And so we do, on our journey through the pipe, inch by inch, as the hours pass, endless hours in the perpetual dark water. My joints ache, my muscles strain and throb with effort. But I must continue. There is nothing else. Our air pockets end, and as before, I scout. Ahead. I have to, of course, because there's no way Ahmad can get past me. After holding my breath for another painful period, I'm blessed to discover a new breathing space, and so we continue in the same manner. However, These air pockets grow shorter and shorter as we proceed, causing me silent concern. But they're still just enough, and so our journey continues. Each time I have to hold my breath and go ahead. It's a brutal exercise in willpower and mental fortitude. But I have a duty. We have to get out. We have to get out. A grueling struggle through the pipe pauses when we reach an air pocket only 3 or 4 meters long. I flinch as my bad shoulder hits something hard and cold. It moves slightly in response to the pressure I exert on it, so it's not a blockage. Perhaps it's my heart leaping, quivering and spinning in the pipe. I do my best to bring my good hand towards its head. It's not a quick process and requires several uncomfortable maneuvers. But eventually, my hand can reach my neck and beyond, and my fingers explore the mysterious object. Despite everything, a smile spreads across my face and I cry out in joy. "Ahmad!" I yell. "Ahmad, I found a bottle. I think, yes, it's all connected here." "A bottle," he replies. "What do you mean?" "I mean a breathing bottle, Ahmad. It's a whole scuba unit." "Yes, it's all here." "Fantastic," he exclaims. "How many?" My enthusiasm wanes. I wriggle further along the pipe, searching blindly in the darkness for evidence of a second diving suit. However, despite my silent pleas, there's only one. "I only found one here," I tell my comrade, "but there might be another one further down. This is a game changer. We can do this. We can get out." "Whose bottle is it?" "Kadar." Ahmed asks me. "I think mine is about half full." "Yes, same," I reply. "What about Amir's?" Ahmed begins to hesitate. "Kadar? I think Amir's is almost empty." I take a deep breath. "Okay," I reply. "Yes, still. This one will help. I'll use it now and see if I can find another set a little further down." "Good luck, Ahmad says. "God bless." I check the bottle as best I can. I keep the breathing apparatus warm around my lips, take a few breaths, then continue back underwater, though this time, equipped with a bottle to help me on my way. I groan and shift my body, wriggling through the pipe, circling around, and I find what will be the last air pocket of this kind. Only 1 meter long, not even big enough for Amit and me to share at once, and to my increasing frustration, there's no sign of a second bottle. So I push deeper, continuing through the pipe, breathing from the bottle, pushing it along with me. As I go, I discover something that provides bitter amusement. What could be my missing second webbed foot, but still, no second bottle, and no more air pockets. Clenching my fists, I realize I need to turn back before Ahmad starts to worry. So, I undertake the painful journey back. In the time with you, I must have felt like hours, but eventually I return to our shared position and inform him of the disappointing news. He is silent as I convey my findings, and then he says, in a soft voice, "Kadar, I think this is the end for me. There's no point in me going any further. I think I'll have to wait here." I begin to protest, but my words die in my throat. What is there for me to say? He's right, of course, it's the harsh truth, but he's absolutely right. He'll simply have to stay. The next stage of the journey, I'll have to do alone. A sudden wave of emotion surges within me, and I suppress it. There's time and place. I try not to consider the fact that this might be the last time I hear his voice. Perhaps I've heard both their voices for the last time. No, time and place. Keep moving. Ahmed. I begin to awkwardly search for a few words that would be worthy of the moment, but he interrupts. "See you soon, man," he says in the darkness. I can't reply immediately, but in reply, I tell him, "Yes, definitely see you soon, man." And with that I propel myself further along the pipe, crawl and wriggle, and I sink. My breath is loud through the connecting pipe of my mouth, and when I reach the last air pocket, I allow myself a second to stop, to muster courage, and then this pocket too is left behind. I continue underwater. The rest of the journey I will be underwater. And since I can't see, there's no way of knowing how much air is left in the bottle. If it was mine, or Ahmad's, I should have hours to spare. If it was Amir's, well, there's no need to be coy. If it was Amir's, then I'll probably die down here. Unless I'm blessed with another unexpected air pocket. It's not impossible, I tell myself as I crawl through the water around me. It's not impossible. And yet, as the hours pass, there are no more air pockets to be found. Only more endless, suffocating dark pipe of the tunnel. How far I've come, I don't know, can't really say. And I don't even know which way I'm going. If it's north, there's hope. If it's south, this whole adventure is pointless. I'll never reach Azrak 2. Azrak 1, on the other hand, for Azrak 1, hope remains, hope still remains. Continuing through the pipe, through the tainted oily water, my elbows burning with pain from friction, my shoulders rubbed raw and bleeding, my legs developing painful blisters from where I'm forced to wedge them into the pipe for leverage to move. And my neck is killing me. It hurts to turn my head too far in either direction. I just grit my teeth and continue. Too late to stop now. Must keep going, and keep going, and keep going. God, give me strength. I murmur to myself as my muscles contract and tingle. Give me the strength to get through this. Thinking of Ahmed of Amir, all alone like me, it helps to propel me forward. I can't give up now when they're counting on me. I can never do that. I can never do that to them. Never. So I continue. The endless darkness, non-stop. The endless torture of the pipe. Except, it's not endless. Fortunately, the good news about my oxygen bottle is that it's definitely not Amir's. If it were, it would be empty. The bad news is that I need deeper and deeper breaths to fill my lungs. And soon, the oxygen the bottle can provide me with won't be enough. It won't last forever. I haven't found any other bottles on my journey, only the one I currently have on me, and then nothing. Game over. Come on, you damn pipe. I hiss through my regulator. You can't go on forever. You can't. And of course, it can't. My head smacks against hard metal. Huh? I mumble, confused. I try to continue my journey, but the path is blocked. I simply can't go any further. My first thought is panic. Fear that I've hit some kind of wall within the warmth. That shouldn't exist. That I've come all this way to find nothing but a dead end. However, after a bit of inspection, I realize a space has opened up above my head. I twist around, and for the first time in hours, I can change my posture and sit upright. My back cracks, and an incredible wave of relief in my muscles flows through me. I bring my hands up to feel around in the darkness, and I almost cry out in joy. The pipe has reached its end. It now goes upwards. Vertically upwards through the sea towards the surface. We're going north. I laugh, the crack of hope widening, flowing into me like silver rivers. We're going north the whole way. The end of the pipe now points upwards to the base at Azra 1 into salvation, unless I misjudge and consider the options now before me. If I'm going to push on, then this is it, really. It's a coin toss for life or death, not much air left in the bottle. And if I climb this pipe only to discover the worst, if this pipe is blocked or sealed, then surely for me there will be no way out. I will truly hit a dead end, all hope lost, and I'll drown down here, nowhere to go. No way forward and no way back. No way back, I shake my head. No choice here. No real choice, just will. I don't have enough air in the bottle to return to Ahmad, even if I wanted to. Only forward, forward and up. All right, I mumble, bubbles escaping. Let's begin. And I start to climb slowly, cautiously. My back pressed against the pipe behind, my knees and calves against the pipe in front. I go up, rock climbing, half swimming, half climbing the pipe. Up the pipe towards the surface, slowly but surely, wincing through strain and pain. And still so dark, so unbelievably dark. The lack of light doesn't fill me with confidence. If the pipe wasn't blocked, surely I'd see some light, wouldn't I? I open my eyes in the water, the salt and oil stinging like hell. But I need to see, or try to see at least. But there's nothing. Not a hint of light. Don't lose faith, I tell myself, closing my eyes tightly. Keep going. Keep going. This vertical section of pipe is unlike the one we were sucked down. This section goes all the way up to the surface, to the relative hustle and bustle of Azrak 1. Except it won't be bustling right now. Of course, I hesitate, taking a deep, strained breath through my regulator, groaning with exertion. Thinking about it, the place might be completely deserted. I don't even know the time. I've been crawling through the pipe for hours. I'm not sure of the exact time, but I'm exhausted. I'm hungry, and my oxygen is running out. If I remember correctly, the place might not even be open tomorrow. I rack my brain and try to remember when they all left the site. Was it tomorrow or the day after? Damn it. What if everyone has already returned to shore? What if the site is empty? What if no one is there to hear me? What if it's blocked? What if? What if? What if? I roar in frustration and continue climbing. Each breath becomes difficult. I'm starting to feel dizzy, but there's nowhere to go but up. This section of pipe can't be more than 80 meters long. So surely if it's open, I'll see light, right? Won't I see light? Please, I whisper as I open my eyes again, squinting through the darkness, fearing that any second I'll hit a barrier or blockage and my journey will come to an abrupt and bitter end. Any second, any moment, I could hit the ceiling and I'll be trapped. In the next second, I break the surface of the water. I hear the sound of water splashing as my head breaks the surface. I'm still in complete darkness, but I've reached the top. Air. I pull out my regulator and suck it all down, filling my lungs with much greater ease. I wipe and brush the oily water from my face and eyes. I did it. I say to no one in particular. My voice echoes around the small, confined space that allows me. But now that I've arrived, perhaps the final obstacle. How cruel will it be? How cruel will it be to have come so far, and then be denied rescue? So close, and yet so far. I twist around and bring my good arm up. With my good hand, I reach up above me, feeling through the darkness as water splashes and drips from my elbow. A few inches above my head, I feel the cap of the pipe, tightly screwed shut. My heart starts to pound. Come on, please, please. I desperately search for an opening mechanism or a valve that will open the pipe from the inside. But alas, as I suspected, there is no such valve. I bring up my other hand, and I try to open the cap. I try to turn it, to shift it, but nothing works, nothing at all. And there won't be anyone on the other side. Why would there be? Their shift is over. They'll all have left the site by now. Gone back to shore. I'm trapped. After everything, I'm trapped. Just like Amir, and just like Ahmad. I begin to bang desperately on the cap. I pound on the pipe as hard as I can. I start to scream, though the sound will be muffled from the outside. My screams of help will only sound like groans, perhaps even be mistaken for the general roar of the pipe. I scream, pounding both fists against the metal with all my remaining strength, disregarding the sharp pains shooting through my broken wrists. Panic threatens to consume me. Now at the final stage of the journey. Hit it! I cry, banging on the cap, kicking the pipe, making as much noise as possible before my body collapses. Is anyone there? I roar into the darkness, and with the sound of a loud, sudden grinding noise directly above my head, the cap shifts, and a blinding, curved crack of light floods into the pipe. I gasp in astonishment, my breath stolen, and I slump into the water with a plop. My eyes squeeze shut, and the world behind my sealed eyelids is a blinding orange red. I can't even speak. I'm too scared to believe what's happening. I feel someone talking to me. Their voices are confused and concerned. They grab me by my diving suit, by my shoulders, and with a considerable amount of effort, they pull me out and onto the deck surrounding the pipe's opening. I can't help but weep. I still can't see, but tears, grime, and oil stream from my face. I have never felt so free. I twist and grimace and stretch my limbs in a way that wasn't possible in what seems like an age. I feel a hand grip my shoulder, a bottle of cool water refresh, and above all, clean, is gently poured over my face. Kadar. A familiar voice. Kadar, what the hell on earth? He fumbles for an explanation to help me. Kadar, what the hell is this? Finally, I can open my eyes, just a slit. Slowly, painfully, they adjust to the light from the floodlights all around. And I'm greeted by the sight of the only employee still at his post. Long after his shift ended, he looks at me, his red hair messy and his stubble disheveled, his expression almost comical in its confusion. A dry laugh escapes my lips. "Hello!" I murmur. You know, I don't think I've ever been happier to see anyone in my entire life, and here, my friends, is the truth. The hours that followed passed like a whirlwind. The company and authorities were notified immediately, and helicopters were sent airborne, and rescue boats were launched onto the water within the hour. The destroyed survival pod site was investigated and secured. Large teams of divers were dispatched, and they scoured the entire length of the pipe deep into the night, banging and tapping on the metal and carefully hunting for Amir and Ahmad. Tragically, there was no response. I remember pacing back and forth in one of the control rooms, taking calls from family in the presence of a few officers and officials, as the pressure in the pipe was carefully balanced, as it was disconnected at the safest point and open for inspection. I remember how I reacted when I was told the news the next morning. After a long, sleepless night, my arm bandaged. I remember the breath escaping me, and I remember collapsing into the nearest chair. It can't be. I mutter, it can't be. There's no way. But the bodies of Amir and were discovered together, about 10 meters north of where we were sucked down. It was ruled that the two men died on impact with the pipe almost instantly. They might not have even realized what had happened. Their final moments of lucidity, I'm told, most likely took place in the survival pod itself before the disaster. To this, I say nothing. I just look out the window as the morning sun reflects and glitters gently on the gentle waves of the sea far below.